Hi folks, so it's time to choose what to read in January 2024. It's the 1st of January today as I'm recording this. I haven't yet decided what I'm going to read, and I thought rather than just present you with my choices, I'd take you through some of my tortured decision making process as I peruse my shelves. So join me for a few minutes doing that, and then we'll come back and look at the books that I eventually chose. So it's the 1st of January and I need to decide which books I'm going to choose to read in this month, and I haven't done that yet. Normally I'm a bit more prepared, but with Christmas and COVID and what have you, I just haven't done it. So I thought normally what I do is stare at my shelves until I'm inspired, so I thought I would ask you to join me in that process. So I'll go through a quick whiz through my shelves looking for books to read, and then we can look at them a bit more closely afterwards. So I have a kind of list of shame in mind this year of kind of authors that I haven't yet read. Jack Vance is one of those. I've never read any of his books. Big Planet, if I can get it off my shelves, I think is quite a good example of his work, so that might be good. Seeing that Werner Vinge there reminds me I haven't yet read A Deepness in the Sky, but I'm not sure I can have the stomach to take on a massive book like that. It's quite big. It is meant to be very good. I might have a go at the Hercules text, actually. I haven't it's not been on my shelves long enough to even find a proper home yet, but it will eventually. That's meant to be very good, so that's possible. So let's consider this to be a long list, shall we? On Basilisk Station, so that's another one. I haven't read any of his books at all yet. That might vie for attention with another book of his, Out of the Dark, which is alien invasion story, which with a twist, which I quite like the sound of as well. I found December's reading just a bit difficult, actually, for various reasons. I didn't get as much done as I want, so I'm interested in sort of feel-good kind of comfort reading. I'm not, after anything too challenging. I hear good things about Bring the Jubilee, so by Ward Moore, which we'll talk a bit more about in a bit. So there's a few there. I probably can't read more than 6 or 7 books, physical books. I might do a Ujima Flip audiobook as well during the month. So those are all recently acquired books, mostly by Adam Roberts, but also James Smythe, another author new to me. I've read Purgatory Mount by Roberts, which I quite enjoyed. I've heard that Stone is a good one of his early works, so that's another potential. I'll leave that there, sort of half in, half out. Nothing really takes my fancy off this shelf at the moment. I would like to read Child's Ladder by Greg Egan, but I gather that's a pretty tricky book to read, so I don't know that I'm interested in anything that hard at the moment. I just got this, actually, so that might be a good one. Infinity Gate, that's the first of a twofer by Mike Carey, space opera type thing. Definite possibility. I'll just bring you over to the vintage shelves. There's a few here I should tackle. I really want to read, where is it? I think that's it, yeah, Tau Zero. Whether I get to it in January is another thing. I've just read Midnight at the Well of Souls, and I quite enjoyed it, but I'm not in a massive hurry to go back to the rest of the series at this point. I wouldn't mind reading that, but I think that's the second book of the Uplift series, and I need Sundiver, I think, is the first, so I'll leave that for a bit until I find the first one. I've only read the first of Cities in Flight, but again, I don't really fancy that at the moment. It's a difficult process choosing a book to read. I haven't read any Harry Harrison. I haven't read any M. John Harrison either, so I might well go for a Centauri Device. I've also got another book by him which is meant to be very good, Light, which I quite like to read too, so it might be a toss-up. That's quite an old one, whereas Light is there's about 30 years separate them, so that's from earlier in his career. The other thing I might like to read, actually, is by Gateway by Frederick Pohl. That's another one I'd quite like to read. And then Bruce Sterling as another author on my list of shame. I don't want to read them all in January, but that's Involution Ocean. Is meant to be very good. It's his first book, I think. It's meant to be very good. I haven't read Robert Silverberg in a while, actually, so I can Perhaps I should fix that this month. Dying Inside is the one I'd really like to read, but I actually don't have a copy of it, so I need to find that first. But Thorns is meant to be pretty good, as is Tower of Glass. It's quite likely that all of his books are very good, so it's just degrees of good. I've read up the line, I really enjoyed that. One I could read is Lord Valentine's Castle, which is the first of the Majapur Chronicles. Decisions. Man in the Maze is meant to be very good as well, as is Book of Skulls, Thorns. They're all good. I think I'm going to go with Tower of Glass as a possible. I may not read it, but I'll hoik it out of there as a possible. Alright, let's see what else takes my fancy. Now then. I've been meaning to read this for a while. So Dave Hutchison and Adam Roberts have sort of collaborated on a sequence. There's 2 more coming out, which are set in a sort of post-apocalyptic world. Shelter is the first and Haven is the second. And I think Dave Hutchison's second book is out now, and I'm not sure about Adam Roberts. That's got to come at some point. So certainly the first of those might be good. I wouldn't mind reading Embassy Town. There's loads of things I wouldn't mind reading. That's the challenge, isn't it? And I'm due a Christopher Priest. So Dream of Wessex is one I'd like to read soon. But I also have all of these lovely pan lozenges to have a crack at, and there are a few Christopher Priests there as well. Inverted world. Now Fugue for a Darkening Island sounds bloody miserable, but I do love the end of the world, so I might have a go at that. It's a slender book, so it shouldn't be too difficult to read. So I think that's probably enough to be going on with. So I'll leave the shelf perusing for now, and let's have a closer look at the ones that I actually will read in the end. So I found December quite challenging from a reading point of view. I didn't quite make it through everything that I wanted to read. There's an entire short story collection I didn't get to that I've carried over to this month. I'm about 3/4 of the way through an enormous 1100-page Peter F. Hamilton book, which I am enjoying, but is quite thick. So I've decided to stick with slender works for January, books that I have a fighting chance of finishing, but that I also want to read. So there's Dave Hutchison's Shelter. You've heard me going on about that as I was looking at it on the shelves. It's sort of post-apocalypse. This one's set in England. But Adam Hardy and his small Berkshire community, interesting for me because I live in Berkshire. Hardship is all they've ever known. For almost a century after the coming of the Sisters, don't know what that is, the survivors of rain-swept England have huddled in their tiny communities, scavenging the ruins of the old world. Now finally the long autumn is coming to an end and society of a kind is starting to rebuild. But for how long? A new tyrant, Frank Pendennis, has risen in the east, while rumours of something even worse are coming from the north. The struggle to inherit the world is just beginning. So this is sounds like struggle for survival, warlords, posturing for position, just trying to live, basically. So I don't know, it's not a very thick book, so quite looking forward to that. I enjoyed Dave Hutchison's Europe series. I liked his writing, so I'm looking forward to reading that. And then we've got Jack McDevitt, The Hercules Text. I've decided to go with this. It was a recommendation by Steve over at Outlaw Bookseller some month or two back. I found it in a haul recently. So again, not very difficult. Hopefully not too difficult to read. I don't know. I've not read any Jack McDevitt, so I don't know what he's like, if he's chewy or not. So this is about signals from outer space and trying to decipher alien communication. This is kind of like the implications of us discovering that we're not alone, more than actually arriving. And then a hard science fiction classic, Tau Zero by Paul Anderson, which has been on my list of things to read for quite some time. Again, a slender book. It's under 200 pages. So as I understand it, this book is about a spaceship that's going off on an interstellar journey, meant to be a number of years, and it's accelerating, and halfway it's meant to flip over and decelerate to get to its end point, and then something happens around the midpoint which makes that impossible. They can't flip over because they can't disengage the Bussard ramjet, which is protecting them from incoming debris or whatever. And essentially they have to keep going and going and going and going. That's the thrust of it, I gather. Thrust, no pun intended. Again, a classic rock hard sci-fi, I think. And then I'm keen to get back into the tender arms of Robert Silverberg. I've only read 2 of his books, but I really enjoyed them. Excellent writing, very descriptive prose. You really feel like you're there. So I'm looking forward to this. This is The Tower of Glass, or Tower of Glass. Simeon Krug's obsession is to see a tower built 1 kilometer high that will reach out to answer the voice from space. So yet another voice from space. The androids are his tools, superb, man-like creatures of man. The androids take Krug for their god and seek to become one with flesh and blood mankind through his wisdom. But Krug is not God, and it takes a god to control the terrible emotions Krug has stirred. In Tower of Glass, Silverberg surpasses himself, apparently. This is a multi-level world of high adventure, considerable tension, and social consciousness. Says none other than Harlan Ellison. And somebody who's definitely on my list of shame that I would like to address this year is M. John Harrison. So I have a few of his books now, not as many as I would like, but a few. And this is, I think, I don't know if it's his first novel. It's certainly one of his early ones. 1975 it was published. It might not be his first, but it's certainly one of his first few. And this is best described as kind of an anti-space opera. I mean, it is space opera, but not regular space opera. Space opera with brains as well as brawn. The hero is a bit of an anti-hero. He's a bit passive. He's not driving the narrative. He's trying to run away, in fact, but events overtake him. Centauri devises a galaxy-spanning novel of intrigue and violence in the great tradition of the all-time classics of science fiction adventure, which I think is probably misdescribing, actually doing M. John Harrison a disservice, because I think he was trying to demonstrate that the space opera is kind of defunct. Actually, it was meant to be its swan song. John Harrison, one of the most brilliant of the new generation of SF writers, has created a story of interstellar excitement to stand comparison with the works of E. Doc Smith and E. Van Vogt. I imagine he would take that to be a massive insult, but never mind, meant to be good. And potentially coming to a space opera of the 1970s video near you soon. And then I decided to go with Bring the Jubilee by Ward Moore, which is a kind of alternative world or parallel universe type tale. Alternative history, that's the word I'm looking for. Hodge Backmaker lives in 20th century New York, a city of cobblestones, gas lamps and 10-story skyscrapers. So it's clearly not our New York of the 20th century. In his world, the Confederate South won its independence in the Civil War, and North America is divided, with slavery and serfdom still facts of life in the Confederacy, and New York a provincial backwater. Bring the Jubilee stands alongside Keith Roberts' Purveyne as science fiction's finest exploration of alternative history. So he's written a bunch of books, but only 4 of which were science fiction. And this is one of them. And apparently this is one of the better alternative history books out there. I like a good alternative history book, so I'm looking forward to reading that. Finally, one I didn't get to in December, but I want to read, is Bob Shaw's Cosmic Kaleidoscope, which is a short story collection. So short stories by Bob Shaw, one of which I've read, which is quite a long one as I recall. So this should not present too many challenges. There's only 8 to read. I probably as well will tackle. So I've been engaging in a reread over the last 6 months or so of Ian Banks' culture books, and the last couple I've listened to on audiobook, and I'm going to continue to do that because it's a really great way of cramming another book in whilst I'm out running or whatever. So I'm going to do Look to Windward, which I haven't read for a long time, probably since it first came out. I'm sure I'll enjoy it. It will be familiar once I get into it, I'm sure. The narration by Peter Kenny, who's the guy that does the culture books, is fantastic. It's really, really good. So I'm looking forward to getting stuck into that. So that's what I'm planning to read in January this year. What are you planning to read? Let me know in the comments. I'm always pleased to hear from you, of course. As always, thank you for watching. But until next time, bye for now.